Morning, guys. Welcome to our webinar this morning. I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes for people to jump on and we'll get started. Just before we start, just a couple of things. If you have any questions, chuck it into the chat or the Q&A box. I'll do some questions afterwards. I know we advertised this for an hour, but I'll only do maybe half an hour. I know we're all busy on a Monday morning. But I do quite a bit to cover, but it's not too much. So I reckon I can get you guys out of here by 10:30. Cool. So this I'll do a quick recap on the accreditation at the moment, the way it's sitting at the moment. So just some stats for you guys to look at. So all of you know it opened May 2022, job checks opened in June 2022, and actual visa applications opened in July 2022 after border closures. A bit of stats. So as of February 16, so a couple of weeks ago, we've had 108,000 applications approved. So it's quite a lot of work visa applications. Those are for about 33,000 employers, which is quite a lot of employers. A few things to kind of look at as well is with the number of applications. So I know everyone goes on about we've had quite high numbers of migrants come through. We've had record migration over the last year, etc. A large chunk of the both the AEWVs and even the job checks have been approved for quite low skilled workers, and also job checks that have been coming through that require no experience or no qualification. So, the numbers might seem quite large in terms of approvals, but there's been quite a big chunk. Just from speaking to INZ, they reckon about 40% of job checks that have been done since 2022 have been for those the bottom end where there's no experience, no qualifications required. So it's quite a large chunk of workers that have come through that may not be as skilled. In terms of LMT, labour market testing, it's been taken at face value. So since it opened back in 2022, up until recently, we've only now started seeing immigration asking for maybe who the applicants were, why they weren't suitable. But over the last just over 18 months, every job check that's been submitted has basically been on at face value. If you've advertised locally in New Zealand and you've said, oh well, I've had 10 applicants, 5 locals, none suitable, immigration haven't really asked for any evidence. They've taken it at face value. We've only seen over the last couple of months have actually asked or started to ask for that evidence coming in. With the accreditations, there's a large number coming up for renewal this year. So as you may know, there was an order extension done or announced last year, February, and then there was also some were given for 2 years initially. So a lot of employers are up for renewal from July onwards this year. A lot of them will be coming up soon as well. Just in regards to post-accreditation checks, so as you may know, immigration, probably September last year, they announced that they will start doing some post-accreditation checks. So what they try and do, they try and do 16% of accredited employees each year. So there's 37,000 employees that are accredited, that are trying to do 16% of those per year. A big combination of that will be just random checks. So INZ, the compliance team will just check random employers, just to see if everyone's keeping on track with visa expiries, with compliance, etc. But quite a big chunk of those are also targeted checks. As you may have seen in the news, for the last 18 months, there have been quite a few employers, especially within labour hire firms. There's been a few other employers as well that have actually taken advantage of migrants. So there's quite a bit of checks happening on certain and specific industries and specific employers. There's quite a bit of checks happening on franchisee employers and also third-party employers, because for some reason those two industries seem to be where the least compliance is happening as well. Apart from them, it's mostly random checks. We've had a few clients that are being checked as well, and what they do generally is someone from compliance will send an email to the company. They'll ask them for just to make sure that all the employees are working in the correct locations, they're getting paid correctly. They may ask for some financial evidence to show that the business is still viable. They may ask for evidence to show how you help them settle, etc. So I'll get into that a bit further on. But just keep in mind that there are post-accreditation checks happening. They are random, some are not, but most are random. A couple of things to look at as well. So with the post-accreditation checks, if there is some sort of compliance breach, perhaps you've got a worker who may have worked while they weren't able to, maybe they were on a working holiday, or they were on a partner visa or whatever visa they were on, they may apply for a different visa and they got an interim visa which didn't have work rights, or perhaps they that visa that was up for expiry and they just worked a few days after the expiry dates. So with the post accreditation checks and the compliance checks, the main thing immigration will look at is if there was a breach, was it addressed and was it actually picked up, and was it a genuine mistake or was it intentional? If you've got 20 workers working for you on visas, and you sending them to work in locations that are not on the visa, they're not being paid correctly, that's pretty much intentional. If you've got a handful of visa holders, and there's perhaps one that there was a slight breach, if it was rectified and it was fixed up very quickly, immigration will look at that in a good light. Most employers are doing the correct thing in terms of compliance, making sure visa holders are looked after. There are a few bad apples, and of course that's in the industry. But immigration are looking out for the bad apples. They're not going to, if an employer is a good employer, it's been a good record of compliance over the last few years. This, maybe a slight breach and that was fixed, immigration will not go after those employers and actually cancel accreditation. So just a few more stats as well here. So as of a week or so ago, immigration have done 2,700 checks, and there's about 600 underway at the moment. They've also received about 2,000 complaints against employers on this thing as well. So with the complaints, I know that seems like a lot of complaints, and it probably is, but this was speaking to INZ. What happened, a few months ago, there were quite a few agents, both local and overseas, that were telling migrants, if you complain to immigration about your employer, you can get an open visa for 6 months, which is the MVPEP, which is the expedition visa. And what happened was a lot of migrants actually laid complaints against their employers without any proof or anything at all. So on this 2,100 complaints, probably about half of them have just been dismissed because there was nothing. There's no evidence at all to back it up. They also have 174 active investigations at the moment, and 145 employers have had the accreditation revoked, and 53 have been suspended. I think the number's actually gone up since February 16. But yeah, so just keep in mind that there are employers, and there still are some at the moment that are being investigated to either have it revoked or suspended. So this coming up for renewal. So as I mentioned before, there are a lot of companies due for renewal July onwards. As it is now, immigration have asked us to not do any renewals until we have the new process and new comms coming out. So you can jump online now to the immigration website. It's actually, the form is live, but it's still the old form. The only difference that I've noticed is a couple of extra questions that have been added in, but the form is still the same as previous. So what immigration have said is, even if you were to submit a renewal now, it won't be processed until April, until the new process is in place. So just keep in mind, so I wouldn't suggest to move on any renewals just yet until we know the new process. Just from what we've heard so far is the new process will be a lot more document and info heavy. So previous one was a lot of yes and no questions. It didn't really ask for any evidence unless it was a new business. With the renewals, it will be a lot more compliance and document heavy. So a few things immigration have already hinted that they will ask for is they'll ask for evidence of, making sure that all the visa holders are working in the correct location. So having evidence of that, making sure all your visa holders are being paid correctly as per the contract and per the visa. So if you've got employees on fixed hours contracts or salary contracts, just make sure they actually get paid the rate that was in both the job check and the visa application. So as I mentioned, so we do expect comms to come out in April this year in regards to the new process, and also the fees may change as well, and the process may change as well. So as it is now, the renewals are meant to go for 12 months. So once you do renewal, you get 12 more months. That of course may change. There's a bit of work happening at the moment by the Minister and Immigration MB as a team to kind of look at the new process and the costs involved, etc. So just keep an eye on this. There may be some changes in application and fee changes as well. What I'll do is, as soon as we have any kind of updates, I'll do another webinar and send the comms out to all our sponsors and employers. Perfect. So pretty much, yeah. So a few things you've got to look out for. The first thing is visa conditions. So when you apply for the renewal, and you can do it now, I'll probably suggest to maybe do a quick compliance audit in your business. Have a look and see who are on visas. So that covers AEWV, visa holders, partnership visa holders, working holders, any type of visa holder would work for you. Just do a quick check, do a quick health check and see, okay, well, are all the visa holders working for us in the correct locations, correct positions, getting paid correctly as well. Double check that all of them have signed employment contracts. Also check that all the visa expiries are tracked. So, if you normally engage a third party like an advisor, perhaps like us, we would normally track visa expiries on behalf of employees. If the employees did the visas themselves, or they maybe engage a third party who's not part of your business, it's worthwhile for you as an employer to track visa expiries. That can be done via Visa View, or perhaps calling Immigration New Zealand to check, when the visa expires. Because it's not always good to take a migrant's expiry date at face value. Sometimes the expiry dates might be different than the visa itself. And sometimes, a migrant will say to you, "Oh, my visa expires, this in 3 years, and it may only be 2 years." And right, so make sure that everyone is working in the correct locations. They're abiding by visa conditions. Also, with the hours as well, there's quite a bit of grey area in terms of people on salaried contracts. Make sure that all the workers are working and being paid correctly as well. Another thing you've got to, of course, make sure that all the AEWV visa holders. So this only covers the AEWVs. It doesn't cover working holidaymakers, partnerships, etc. It's only people that have come through on AEWV. So make sure that all the migrant workers that hold an AEWV, they've done the employee modules, and also make sure that all the key people in your business have done the employee modules as well. Make sure you keep a good, risk and accident register in case that happens. Any complaints that have been made, keep records of those as well. And of course, keep good records of, wages, PAYE, etc. Most businesses will have some sort of accounting software they use, which is, pretty easy to show all these things. Or perhaps even a good HR system which will track your visa expiries, will track the employment agreements, etc. as well. Another thing to make sure as well is to make sure that all the migrants you hire on AWVs are actually inducted properly. So when you hire someone from overseas on AWV, make sure that you've got good induction plans for them. You can build it into your current induction if you've got a really good induction plan. Build it in, build something into it which covers everything you've got to cover, which that includes the employee modules, it includes the settlement information, which I'll get to in a second as well. So just make sure when you do hire from overseas, or even someone local who's on a visa, make sure you do good induction. I know the induction process, or sorry, the settlement information induction is quite a new thing to New Zealand. But just make sure you do good induction. In terms of settlement information, so these are only some examples of things you can provide to new employees. Accommodation options, transport options, cost of living, how to access healthcare services, how to get an IID number. What I'll do is once after the webinar, we'll send the slides out. This little link on the screen there, that's actually really handy link. So if you click on the link there, it goes to a Word document that's been set up by INZ, about 15 pages. And it actually put on your company name and actually make it specific towards your industry and your company as well. It covers pretty much everything that's on screen now, and it helps your migrants settle as well. There's a couple of things to note as well. So I know we've said that it will be quite compliance heavy moving forward for renewals. And saying that, I know with the settlement information, with the employee and employer modules, just from speaking to other advisors, even speaking to some employers, I think a lot of employers may not have done all this, the settlement information, the employee-employer modules. So, Immigration is not aware of this as well. So we're still waiting to hear from INZ on how they'll actually look at this in terms of, if someone perhaps didn't provide a migrant employee with a settlement guide, will that be considered, a breach in compliance perhaps? Personally, I don't think it will. I think the main thing immigration will look at is the actual visa side of things. If someone's had a breach in visa conditions, that's going to be those sort of things they look out for more compared to the settlement information or the employer and employee modules. But keep in mind that it's worthwhile getting this set up, even if you didn't do it maybe previously for your workers, getting it in place now. For when you do renewal, an immigration asks, oh, what have you done for your new employees? At least you've got a guide set up as well. I don't think I'll go too hard on employees who didn't do it initially, as long as you can show you've done it now. And this, I wanted to make one quick note on the Worker Protection Act. So I'm not sure if you are aware, but we had a new act come into place in January this year, January 6th actually, and that pretty much just covers migrant and other employees. The act is not fully live yet, so immigration expect the act to take or to actually go live in April this year, so in a couple of months. But just be aware. One thing you've got to look out for is under the new Protection Act, any employer who notices a breach. If any employer who employs visa holders, so that's any visa holder, working holders, partnership, AWV, student, post-study, any visa holder that's allowed to work, if you as an employer pick up this breach, you've got to notify Immigration New Zealand or MB within 10 working days. So just keep that in mind. It will take effect in April this year. And as part of this piece of work, there's going to be, immigration will have a bit of a table and a scale of, what's considered a breach. And then from that, they'll work, okay, what's considered, a breach that actually results in someone being stood down as an employer or someone gets fined. Just keep in mind that this act will come into place this year, and it will also be used for the new renewals going forward as well. So just a quick recap. So as it is now, don't do any renewals until April this year, until we have some comms from INZ, and until we know what the process will look like. Make sure that all your current employees are abiding by visa conditions, location, wages, positions, etc. Make sure you've got a good settlement guide set up for your employees, and also make sure that both the key people in the business and also the migrant employees have done the modules as well. If you haven't done the settlement guide, if you haven't done the modules, set it up now. Make sure you've got it in place now for the renewal to come up in July this year. Perfect. That pretty much covers it in short. What I'll do is I'll stop my slides and we'll go for some questions and answers. Jack, we will send you through a copy of this after the webinar. And what I will do as well is, as soon as we've got some updated information on the new process, cost, etc., we will do another webinar and also send some comms out to employers. But just to recap again, what I'd suggest is if you haven't done some of the things that I've covered in the list, reach out to us or reach out to your advisor if you use someone else, and just run through run through what we've done so far, run through what we think may change, and just make sure all that's in place. The last thing you want to do is kind of ignore it now and get to renewal this year and then get stuck with something you haven't done. But the main thing I think immigration will look at is visa breaches. The settlement information and the employee modules, it's probably not going to be too much of a concern if it wasn't done, perhaps, because I think given the numbers we've had and just the busyness for employers post-border openings, I think a lot of employers may not have done all that stuff. But if you haven't, get it in place now, run it through, or pass someone, like us perhaps, and let's make sure that you've got all that in place. Perfect. I don't think there's any other questions. Anyone else have any questions? Nothing in the chat box, Q&A? No. Okay, cool. So what we'll do is here, one more question. There we go. Okay, perfect. One from Tanya, cool. Who in the business needs to complete the modules? Yep. So Tanya, so when you did your initial accreditation, there would have been questions on the key people. So normally it would have been either the directors of the business or HR or anyone who's involved with the visa process. So what you can do is you can go back to your your application for accreditation. You actually see who were nominated as key people. Have a look and see who those were, and then complete the modules, and then just keep records of that. The modules don't take long. I think it's about 20 minutes, if maybe half an hour at most. It pretty much covers employment law in New Zealand from both an employer's perspective and an employee perspective as well. So Tanya, just check and see who were nominated as key people in your business and get them to do that and just keep records. Question for Mark. How long did it take to complete? Yeah, it's about 20, 30 minutes, Mark, from memory. I haven't done it since August 2022. So I think they've had a couple of updates in that, just because of the we've had some changes in employment law. Question from Tanya. Oh yeah, so Tanya, so we've got two things. So we've got the employee modules. So every new migrant that comes in, you've got to give them paid time to complete the employee modules, which covers employment law in New Zealand. The settlement information, that can be part of the induction or even the pre-roll in New Zealand. So you can set up a guide and you can actually give them a guide on how to do these things. You don't have to do it for them. So you don't have to help them set up an account or help them get an IRD number or help them find a rental. Some employers do, but it's mostly to give them information. So if you set up a 2-3 page guide, if you send that to them as part of the induction process, that's all you've got to do. There's something also to make note is with the employee modules. So with the employee modules, every key person has to complete it. They've got to keep evidence of that. With the employee module, so with the migrant workers, they don't actually have to complete it. It's not a condition of the visa. As long as you've given them time to complete it, that's fine. So that covers the employer side. So if you've got a new employee starts next week, you email them, hey, complete these modules next week during work hours. That's all you've got to do. If they don't do it, it's up to them, but you've given them time to do it. Cool. I think that's all the questions. Give me one more sec. One more question coming through. Cool. Question from Johan. Yep. So it's once a year. Oh, sorry. With the employer modules, you do it once per your accreditation. So initially it was, companies got 2 years, some got 1 year, but all those were extended. So it's normally per accreditation around, I suppose. So, this year's renewal will be for 12 months. It means you've got to do it within the 12-month period. So it's basically once a year. With the migrant workers, of course, it's they do it every time every new migrant do it. They don't have to do yearly renewals, and also, of course, if they move to another employer, they don't have to do that either. So with the migrants, they only do it once. With the employers or the key people, they do it once a year. Okay, I think it's all the questions. Perfect, cool. Any questions you guys have, feel free to flick me a note, give me a call. We'll send through a copy of these slides out this afternoon, and just keep an eye on updates on both on LinkedIn and also on emails for updates once we have comms. We expect comms in April, so I reckon in a couple of months from now we'll have a better indication of what to do for renewals. Perfect, we'll finish it off. Thanks, guys. I hope you guys have a good Monday, and we'll chat soon. Cheers, bye-bye.